Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Nate here. And Skyrim is a land home to many dangers. Monsters, dragons, zombies, bandits. It seems like in any direction you look, a battle may await. Thankfully, the world of the Elder Scrolls V also offers you, the Dragonborn, access to an almost bottomless arsenal of powerful weapons spread across the realm, just waiting for you to wield them. Now, while any bow, sword, or battle axe can be pretty cool, there are a handful of unique, rare, or otherwise secret items that are especially impressive, and warrant some further discussion and exploration. So, covering some of those will be the object of today's video. Throw some more wood on the fire, pour yourself out a glass of your favorite mead, and relax, as we take a look at 5 more secret and rare items you may have missed in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Part 4, I suspect. Starting off, we have Dragonbane. This is a unique Akaviri katana the player can find just lying on a table in a small room in the northern wing of Skyhaven Temple. And it's a strange beast. Now, before we dive too deep into the blade itself, do keep in mind that since it's in Skyhaven Temple, you will have to progress around halfway through Skyrim's main questline before you can even get to it. And even then, if you take it, it will be marked as stolen unless you opt to join the Blades and kill Paarthurnax at the end of the game. Which, judging by some polling, nobody wants to do, so just be wary. Anyway, I digress. The first thing that makes Dragonbane unique, aside from its name, is its custom enchantment and accompanying visual effect. Dragonbane does extra damage to dragons, and delivers 10 points of shock damage per hit. No other weapon in the game does this. Well, okay, shock damage isn't special, but extra damage concentrated against dragons sure is. Hence the sword being the bane of all dragons. Additionally, the katana has a special aesthetic effect that causes sparks and electricity to fizzle and flow alongside the length of the blade. While some shock-enchanted weapons will glow blue and whatnot, the actual sparks flying out of the item is totally custom to Dragonbane, which makes it especially appealing to collectors and stunning to view in darker interiors. Now, you may notice that I have yet to tell you this weapon's exact stats. I've explained its effects and enchantment, but not the actual numerical values behind everything, or how much damage the sword does. That's because, while only one Dragonbane exists for you to acquire in the entire game, there's technically 5 different versions of it that may spawn in, depending on your level, each with different stats. So, while the weakest version of this weapon spawns in for players level 1 through 18, and does 10 points of damage and an extra 20 damage to dragons, the strongest version, which spawns in after you've reached level 46, deals 14 points of base damage and an extra 40 to dragons. So, quite a bit of variety there. Again, there's 5 different versions between these two extremes, making it kind of difficult to describe how effective Dragonbane is. I mean, it varies. Though, luckily, the shock damage value will not change at all, so there's a little bit of consistency for us. Overall though, at its best, Dragonbane is an alright addition to your arsenal. The damage emitted from it, for a one-handed weapon, isn't great, but the extra shock damage helps out a good bit. But until you are battling with dragons, realistically speaking, this is probably something to keep displayed in a glass box or somewhere prominently in a gallery, as there are other items available earlier in the game that are just as effective, if not more so. Though there are not many that are quite as pretty. Next on our list. Okay, this item is kind of weird, because while it's not necessarily a quest item, I guess it can be. Kavozane's Fane is a unique Dragon Priest dagger that can radiantly spawn in a number of Nordic ruins, usually found in the final chambers next to an end dungeon boss. Its placement is random though, and there's only one that will ever spawn in the entire world. So it may be a while before you come across Kavozane's Fane for yourself. When you first do though, it seems like nothing fancy. Dealing a measly 6 points of damage per swing, it's just like any other Dragon Priest dagger, And considering there's no explanation offered behind this item's name, at least initially, it appears totally out of place and useless. However, it does have one special power, and this is where its sort of quest item status kicks in. When Kavozane's Fane is equipped, and the inventory of a slain dragon is entered, you'll be able to loot a unique kind of item, called Dragon Heart Scales, on top of all of the normal things that appear in a Dova's inventory, like dragon bones and scales. These heart scales don't do much. They're useless in crafting or enchanting, though can be sold for 250 base septims each, so that's actually pretty neat. But on to the point. Why is this dagger a thing? Why is it letting us loot these weird items from the inventories of dragons? What's going on here? Well, if the player has reached level 90 in the Alteration Magical skill tree, and are an active member of the College of Winterhold, you can speak to Tolfdir, one of the professors, and ask if there's anything more you can do to learn about alteration magic. He'll respond by explaining, not exactly, but he does have one task he needs some help with, and if you do so, he'll teach you a new spell. He'll ask that you bring him a Dragon Heart Scale, which he describes as an extremely rare alchemical ingredient that can only be sliced off the corpses of dragons, with an extremely sharp and equally legendary blade known as Kavozane's Fang. Never mind the fact that you can have this conversation with Tolfdir long before the dragons show up, but he claims that Kavozane's Fang was made from the tooth of a Dova worshipped by a specific sect of the ancient dragon cult, and allegedly, it's the only object in the world that possesses the ability to cut off dragon heart scales. The quest will then direct you to wherever Kavozane's Fang can be found on your map, if you've yet to already pick it up. And then all you need to do is use it to collect a heart scale or two, and bring it back to complete the quest, and have Tolfdir reward you with a new leveled spell. So that's what Kavozane exists for. It's a quest item that can just spawn in prematurely is all. I will say, despite how ineffective it is in combat, keeping it in your inventory may not be a bad idea, just in case you encounter and defeat a dragon, as heart scales do again sell for 250 gold. And a couple will usually come in on any Dova. So while it may not do you well as a weapon of war, it can earn you a good bit of coin. And because it's a quest item, it's not like you can remove it from your inventory anyway, so might as well get something out of it. Coming in at number 3, we set sail for the island of Solstheim, to take a gander at what is honestly among my favorite items in the game, the Championscudgel. This is a unique warhammer you can find in the ruins of Fort Frostmoth, wielded by a zombified General Falx Carius. I've told it before, so I'll try to be brief, but the story behind this hammer, and especially its wielder, is pretty cool. Essentially, Falx Carius was a character we could meet back in the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind's Blood Moon DLC. He commanded the Imperial garrison at Fort Frostmoth, and in fact, occupied a pretty pivotal role in the Neravine struggle against Hircine in that expansion. He was a strong ally. After the eruption of the Red Mountain, between the events of Morrowind and Skyrim, he seems to have passed away. And just before the events of the Dragonborn DLC, the poor guy was resurrected by a deranged necromancer, and now he's hostile against all things living. But it's his warhammer itself that we're interested in today. And man, is it interesting. It sports a totally custom model and texture, with an Imperial dragon etched onto its sides, and a neat array of spikes dotting its face, to make for an especially intimidating aesthetic. The stats are almost just as impressive, with a base damage rating of 24, only 3 points weaker than a Daedric Warhammer, which is quite strong already. But the Championscudgel's enchantment is going to make it even better. You see, it comes with the Chaos damage effect. This isn't a unique enchantment by any means. It's somewhat rare, but can be found on a couple of items throughout the Dragonborn DLC. And man, is Chaos damage not insanely OP. It grants a 50% chance to deal 25 points of fire, frost, and or shock damage independently per hit. The key word being independently. Each of those types of destruction magic, fire, frost, and shock, has a chance to trigger. What this means is that each hit can deal up to 75 points of extra destruction magic damage if you're lucky and all three trigger. And that's surprisingly common. It's also not uncommon to do 50 points of extra damage as two values trigger. So chaos damage is a lot more powerful than you might initially suspect. In fact, I'd argue it's perhaps the most powerful enchantment in the entire game. And combining that with a weapon already as strong as the Championscudgel really makes for an amazing combination. This Warhammer is just all around a great weapon that will serve you well both in a display case and on the battlefield too. For our fourth spot, if the last item we just went over, the Championscudgel, was this amazing item to use in combat and also looked great, I think it's time we share something that's the exact opposite. This is Borevers Dagger, a technically unique elven dagger that can be found at Journeyman's Nook, a very tiny Nordic ruin located in Winterhold. When we first arrive at the Nook, we'll find what appears to be what remains of a very small laboratory, occupied by the corpse of a mage named Borevers, who has multiple arrows sticking out of his back, and a very aggressive bandit, who likely is responsible for putting those arrows in Borevers' back. After the bandit has been slain, we can do some looking around, and honestly, there's not much of significance here. There's a few books, but nothing that really explains who Borevers was. However, next to his corpse will be Borevers' unique dagger. Now, the really funny thing here is that aside from its name, Borevers' dagger only has one special property: its base value. You see, while a normal dagger sells for 95 septims, Borevers' only sells for 18. That's right, the only thing that makes this item special is the fact that it's worse than the generic brand. I don't think that occurs very often with any other weapons. Okay, so at this point you're probably asking yourself, what's Borevers' deal and why is his dagger weaker than the original? Well, there is a bit of an interesting story behind how Borevers got here, at least from a development perspective. Borevers was originally slated to be a part of a now cut quest from the College of Winterhold, called The Missing Apprentices. Thanks to some quest markers and dialogue buried deep within the game's files, we know the College of Winterhold was originally supposed to contain this side quest, which would have sent the player on a mission to track down the remains of 4 different college students who mysteriously disappeared. During the mission, we would eventually learn that each of those 4 students died in spectacularly unfortunate manners. One guy got eaten by a bunch of mole rats, another girl accidentally set herself on fire while practicing with the flame spell, and Borevers over here was attempting to create a new type of mead that he thought would be able to compete with hunting brew. He had dreamed of using frost magic to chill that mead for a certain period of time, but nobody at the college knew where his laboratory was, and they hadn't heard back over some time. As we would learn during this quest, Borevers' laboratory was here, at Journeyman's Nook, and he was evidently killed by a bandit during his time here, which is why nobody's heard from him in so long. Now, since this quest was of course cut from the game, we're not actually sure if this is canonized lore by Bethesda, but if it's not, they must have forgot to remove his body and his dagger. We're still unsure why the dagger is weaker than what it's based on, but at least we have something that resembles a backstory. And man, is that backstory not kind of hilarious. And finally, last on our list, I'm excited to show off the first bow of this list. But before that, in order to acquire it, we'll have to dive deep into the dwarven depths of Arcathans. Here, towards the final chambers of the dungeon, we can find the unique Zephyr Bow, Zephyr. Now, while not technically a quest item per the game's definitions, much like Kavozang's Fang, it has a deep connection to a quest. You see, Arcathams is the center of the Dawnguard DLC side mission, Lost to the Ages. and it's at this location we aid the ghost of Katria, an archaeologist who died here after taking a mighty fall. We'll aid her in completing some of her old research by recovering an ancient artifact and assisting her in clearing out the dungeon, so that she may finally rest in peace. As we near the end of Arcathams, we can find Zephyr, lying tranquilly on a tipped-over log, and it's in fact extremely easy to miss if you're not paying attention, as the exact spot it's in is really out of the way. But if you have Katria as an active companion during that Lost to the Ages quest, she'll normally point out the bow, claiming that it in fact used to be hers, and that's the log where she fell to her death in the first place. Simply pick up the bow, and now it will be all yours. Initially, much like a couple of other objects we've explored today, Zephyr doesn't seem like much to write home about when considering its base stats. A damage rating of 14 does make it 2 points stronger than a default Dwarven bow, but it's still far from Daedric. Like so much else on this list though, what makes Zephyr really useful is its enchantment, as the item comes with an additional effect that gives it the ability to fire arrows 30% faster than any other bow in the game. This, as it turns out, makes the item a big deal. As while Zephyr's damage may not be super strong, the ability to fire it so much quicker than anything else means that Zephyr has the highest damage per second of any ranged weapon in the entire game, hands down. Now, even better, what may really draw you into Zephyr is the fact that this enchantment stacks with the Quick Shot Archery Skill Tree perk, which in itself improves your arrow fire speed to 130%. So with Zephyr and Quick Shot, you could be firing nearly 170% faster than normal, which is incredible. These quick fire rates also translate to a faster overall draw speed, so it will take less time for you to pull arrows fully back and get the maximum range out of the bow. The only thing I could really ask for out of Zephyr now is a unique appearance. It has such a cool effect, name, and story behind it. I'm disappointed Bethesda never gave it a custom model, or at least texture. Nonetheless, you better believe that, like with most things, there is, thankfully, a mod for that too. And with that, we are going to wrap up. 5 more unique, secret, and/or rare weapons you may have missed in The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Part 4, I think. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. Which of these neat items did you find to be the neatest? And which ones were you already aware of, and what do you think deserves to be featured next? Leave a comment down below. As always, like ratings are very much appreciated, and a huge shout out, the size of Tamriel, to everyone who's chosen to support the channel over on Patreon or through the join button here on YouTube. It really does mean a lot. Anyway, again, thanks for watching, and I hope to catch you all in my next video. Peace out, everybody.